Hi folks, this is a video series that will talk about the idea of using inner source concepts with VSTS. So if you are looking for a way to do inner source product program software development within your organization and you use VSTS, this video series will be for you. Let's talk real quick about inner source, quick intro around that. It's really the idea of using open source concepts internally in your organization, and that really originated at PayPal. And the idea is we have these projects, we have people who are passionate about these projects. Let's let them, when they have Slack time or whatever, let's let them contribute to some of these projects in an open source way within your organization. If you're really interested in more of the details, because certainly there's a lot more to it than that, I would suggest looking at O'Reilly. There's a Getting Started with Inner Source ebook. It's free out there. Check that out. But this particular video series is more about the mechanics of how we set up VSTS to do that. So we're going to start out today kind of setting up how we get requests from team members across the organization into your inner source project in the most efficient manner. So VSTS certainly has the tools needed to create an open source project. I'm showing you right here kind of the initial dashboards that are available. There's also, there's a code tab, and we'll talk about that later, how we set them up to do forks and how people can contribute code to the projects. We'll talk that a little bit more in detail. We're really going to talk more today about, or in this video, about how we request work from the team, from people outside of the team. So we're going to talk about setting up different teams to allow those organizational contributions, and also this will allow folks to at least read the code. They won't necessarily have contribute rights. We'll talk about the trusted committers who have that ability to create code in a later video. So how do we actually set that up, right? I want to give a hat tip to Dan Newman. He asked this question not about an inner source project, but something unrelated, and it gave me the idea that, hey, we can use this for an inner source project, and let's show you how we set that up. So that's really where this came from, and how we can do this. So the question is, as you can see in VSTS, I have a project. We're calling it an inner source POC, an Agile Thought sponsor project. And the great thing about VSTS, if you aren't aware, is you can create teams. So I'm going to go here in the belly of the beast, if it were, as it were. Hello. Here we go. Go to my settings. And if we look at the overview, you're going to see I've already created that, but I've made two teams as this loads. The first team, there's obviously the default team, and then we have the first team I've created, which is the core team. They're the contributing team. And then there's the request team, and that's the team that will be able to add requests, those kinds of things, into, obviously, this particular project. So now if we go to the core team, they have the rights to look at the different work that's going in. So they're going to look at work items. We're going to go to their backlog. These are the things they're going to be working on in their backlog. So if I'm on the core team, I can create a brand new PBI, and in this instance, I'm using a Scrum template. You could use an Agile template as well. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to talk about, this is feature 1, for instance. We'll add that here. and that's all well and good, and then feature 2 and so on. We add those there. That's great. We've got our backlog, and we can prioritize them. Maybe in the core team, we think feature 2 is first. So that's all well and good. Now, let's say I'm not part of the core team, but I have this idea for this new project, right? So what I want to do is I want to go to the request team. And when we look at the request team, when I go and look at the request team, here they are, I can actually add requests. They could be a defect or a product backlog item, just in the same way I was just doing that on the core team. But these requests will stay here, and the core team can then they can look through it and determine what they want to do in this, what they want to do with these items. So let's say I add a new feature for UI. It's a terrible title, right? And maybe I want to do a bug, so we'll say this UI doesn't work. We'll add that. So in that way, I'm showing all those features, but guess what? It doesn't show up in the core team's backlog, which is the way we want it. If I go and look at the core team's backlog, I just have feature 1 and feature 2. And the core team can go in now. They actually have access to the request team, and they can move things. The request team only has read-only access to the core team, so they can't move things to core team. And in this case, in this way, if I'm on the core team, which I am, I would say, okay, let's put that in the core team. I think that's important. And now that's going to show up on the core team's backlog. So if I go back now, I've got the core team backlog, and yes, I have that new item here. And this is really, you would advertise the other URL to all the folks in your organization. They can add things to it, and then as you figure out who are the people who would be trusted committers, then you can add them to your core team. And that's really how we want to do that. I'll also show, if you go to your code, you know, you're going to have CI and those types of things all built around that, and the core team will take charge of that. So that's really a quick intro to how, when VSTS, we're going to initially set up my 2 teams so that I have an inner source project set up in VSTS, and the next time we'll talk a little bit more and delve a little bit more into the code and what you might want to do on your inner source project within VSTS. Hopefully this has been helpful.